Thank you. Okay, I'm also going to do the devotional tonight. So what I wanted to do is you've all heard me talk about the Monday night meeting and how much I enjoy it and how much it's helped me. And I always say, I just say, well, the Monday night meeting and the process, how they go hand in hand, and so tonight I'm going to try to bring it all together instead of just saying that, because I say it a lot, but I don't really, I haven't really been able to put it together. So I've been looking into it, and so thing about recovery meetings are when somebody hears, the word recovery, 12-step recovery, they just think of drugs and alcohol, and that might have a tendency to drive somebody away. But it's so much deeper than drugs and alcohol. And so once I got into it and started looking, I want to, this is right out of the Serenity book that we have here that we do at the 12-step program. So I'm going to start with that. And what it is, so I want to start with the Serenity prayer. Now I broke the Serenity prayer down. So let's start there. Everybody familiar with Serenity prayer, I wonder? Most of us? Yeah. So it begins with God granting me serenity. Now, the definition of serenity is a state of being calm, peaceful, and untroubled. Okay, so that one was pretty easy. To accept the things I cannot change. And these are some examples of the things we can't change. Okay, so I Googled this. I don't know if these may be good or bad examples. I'm not positive. You'll have to decide. But it says everything changes and ends always is one thing that we can't change. Things do not go according to plan. Number 2, life is not always fair. 3, pain is a part of life. And number 5, people are not loving and loyal all the time. That's an example of things that we can't change. We have to remember to accept things and people for what and who they are. You cannot change people, but you can change yourself. If you do suffer from any issues, just remember that you have to be able to accept and love yourself before you can make changes. Remind yourself that you can't change what has already happened. Okay. The courage to change the things I can. The definition of courage is having the strength and determination to do what is within my control. Strength in the face of difficulty, pain, or grief. If we seek to intelligently assess and change a situation, we can avoid acting impulsively or foolishly. In the Serenity Prayer, and then this is wisdom, to know the difference. In the Serenity Prayer, wisdom means knowing what is within your control and what is not in your control. Okay, so here we go. Okay, got a mark here. Okay, so here we go. This is really interesting how this breaks down, because on the list that it gives us here, alcohol and drugs is the number one reason. Is the number one addictive agent. But then it goes on a list that you're going to find kind of really pretty incredible. So that you have picked up Serenity probably means that you or someone you love is already involved in or considering joining a 12-step program of recovery. We embark on recovery as a means of seeking freedom from any one or more of number of addictive agents. Addictive agents are those persons or things on which we form an excessive dependency. The catalog of addictive agents include, number 1, alcohol and drugs. But I'm just going to read these off. Work, achievement, and success. Money addictions, such as overspending, gambling, hoarding. Control addictions, especially if they surface in personal, sexual, family, and business relationships. Food addiction, sex addiction, approval dependency, the need to please people. Rescuing patterns towards other persons. Dependency on toxic relationships. Physical illness, exercise and physical conditioning. That physical illness is hypochondria. Cosmetics, clothes, cosmetic surgery, trying to look good on the outside. Academic pursuits and excessive intellectualizing. Religiosity or religious legalism. Preoccupation with the form and the rules and regulations of religion rather than benefiting from the real spiritual message. General perfectionism. cleaning and avoiding contamination and other obsessive-compulsive symptoms, organizing, structuring, the need to always have everything in its place, materialism. I mean, the list is extensive. It's not just drugs and alcohol. And it goes on to say, most of us can see ourselves somewhere in this list, and all of us can benefit from the truths that emerge from them. 12-step recovery, because all of us are to some degree codependent. What does that mean? We define codependency as being an effort to control interior feelings. Interior feelings, that's important. By manipulating people, things, and events on the outside. Much of the need to do this arises from our own childhoods, from the experiences we have had in our own families of origin. Okay, and this is leading into where I really want to go with this. Okay, so as a church and as a group and as an individual, we want to do the best we can for our loved ones, for the people around us, for our kids, for ourselves. Okay, let me finish this here. We have to heal our human relationships, and that means healing both the past, painful memories from the dysfunctional family of origin and our contemporary relationships as well. We must choose a recovery family. This can be a support group, a 12-step group, or a church community, but we need a new and healthy chosen family. We need to rejoin and grow closer to God in the spiritual family, both the church and recovery groups, such as, and then it goes on to list Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever, but it is critical that we heal our dependencies not only for ourselves, but also for the sake of our children. Psychologists believe that codependency is a love hunger that can be transmitted from generation to generation. And we've all heard Frank talk about love problems. It's a love issue, in the past. And emotionally dysfunctional families beget codependent adult children who then create their own dysfunctional families and beget more dysfunctional children. There are healing solutions to this love hunger. Both the 12 steps and the Bible speak to the human hunger and neediness that result from codependency, hunger that is emotional and spiritual in nature. To appreciate the biblical foundations of the 12 steps, review with us the history of this approach to healing. Now it talks about codependency in here, but that is, when you hear codependency, you just think, I'm codependent on my significant other. But codependency, you need to do one of these examples that I gave you just to get by every day, just to keep yourself together, I guess. So let me jump over here. What I want to do here is let's see. Okay. Sorry, folks. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to go out of step 1 and step 4 out of the recovery, out of the Serenity book. So step one gives me I want to go to Romans 7:18 through 20, and I've got it here real quick. Romans 7:18 through 20. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, nothing good dwells. For the will is present with me, but how to perform what is good I do not find. For the good that I will to do, I do not do, but the evil I will not to do, that I practice. Now if I do what I will not to do, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. And then I'm going to step forward, and then I'll try to pull all this together. I'm sorry that I'm stumbling around. This was pretty amazing enough, and when I went through this the other day, we actually did step forward Monday night. It says the personal inventory is crucial to understanding. Step 4 is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Personal inventories are crucial to understanding the new direction of our spiritual growth. What aspects of our character do we need to retain and emphasize, and what should be modified or discarded? 6 components that might go into such an inventory are described in the following paragraphs. First, we may need to tell our stories. This can be accomplished by journaling, that is, by writing out our stories and by sharing them with others in recovery meetings or private dialogue. Preparing our stories allows us to assess the major events of our life. Knowing the steps of our past journey helps us to evaluate honestly our present situations. Sharing our stories may enable others to better understand us and may open new avenues through which they can touch and heal our lives. Okay. A second component in our inventory is discovering the roots of our addictions and codependencies. In most cases, this means we have to examine our childhoods. What needs were not met there? What negative experiences or messages about ourselves did we absorb in the dysfunctional family of origin? There are 6 types of family of origin dysfunction that can generate or create a later adult addiction or codependency. Active abuse, passive abuse, emotional incest. Emotional incest means this. In families where one or both parents are in some way emotionally or physically disabled, the young child will begin to assume parental or spousal responsibilities toward a parent. For example, if 7-year-old Susie's mother is alcoholic, Susie may begin herself up for school, fixing her own breakfast and urging her mother out of bed in the afternoon to keep peace with Dad. Susie becoming a mother to her mother. Unfinished business. If parents have not made peace with the disillusionments or defects or limitations in their own lives, the child may pick up their unfinished business. A father who is frustrated and unsuccessful in his work may push his sons and daughters to be compulsive, perfectionist, and workaholic in order to compensate for his own limitations. Now, I want to give an example here of how I understand this. So my father wasn't a particularly tough man. He was a big man. You know, I remember him being a monster of a man when I was young. But as I think about it, and his abuse came out on kids and women. He wasn't a particularly tough man, but he tried to instill in us boys that we needed to be tough, that we needed to be hard, that we needed to fight. And that's how I figured out today that he wasn't really particularly tough, because he really just wrote on us about that. I mean, purposely fight, purposely get us in fights, no son of mine, And that was his big deal, That's what he wanted from us. Negative messages about who and what the child is. Nah, I'm sure we've all heard these. You ain't worth nothing. You're no good. You won't amount to nothing ever. Things of that nature. Very, very, very detrimental. Split off feelings or needs. In dysfunctional families, members deny their feelings and bury their needs. These needs will later try to assert themselves, but may do so in very damaging ways. Okay, false shame or carried shame. This is very, very important right here. This is undeserved blame that we have taken upon ourselves for people or situations over which we may have had no control. Adult children of dysfunctional families often carry an enormous residue of false guilt for their parents' dysfunctions. Authentic guilt. As adults and sinners, we have probably hurt many people in many ways. We have caused this hurt through things we have said, through things we have done, and through things we have left undone. We need to distinguish between these 2 types of guilt, handing back the false shame and recognizing those areas of authentic guilt for which we do need to ask forgiveness. And the 6th one is we must look for the good. An important counterbalancing dimension is that a step 4 inventory should include the positive as well as the negative things about us. What positive legacies have we derived from our childhood and adolescence? What positive survival mechanisms have emerged from our struggles to cope? For example, the compulsive overachieving student. Mike, can we put that Mike's going to put up a deal that I have up on the screen right here. Permission to live, permission to, let's see, what are our skills, talents, gifts, and attributes? What positive permissions have we granted to ourselves? Permission to live, permission to be healthy, permission to recover, permission to experience relative happiness in adult life. What positive recovery steps and changes are currently being implemented in our lives? And for step 4, I've got Proverbs 16, 2 and 3. And that's going to be, that says, all the ways of man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirits. Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. Okay, so let me tell you where I'm trying to go with all this. Also, let me tell you here the process. We were born into this world for a life of growth and work. As unfortunate as it may sound, these two things are what make up the majority of life. When we are children, these two activities are synonymous. Growing up and maturing into adulthood is the goal of every child, whether they realize it or not, and they work at maturing constantly. At some point in our late adolescence or early adulthood, we assume, as our society as a whole does, that we are all grown up because our bodies are physically matured. But we rarely examine our mental, emotional, and spiritual maturity. Often our maturity in one or more of these areas is sufficiently lacking. This lack of maturity can be the result of myriad of circumstances, from childhood neglect and abuse to overprivilege, entitlement, and all points in between. The circumstances won't be the focus here as much as the result of the circumstances, as we all have an endless supply of differing reasons for being the way we are, but we all have the same responsibility to confront our issues, be healed, and develop beyond them. Then the main question arises, how do we mature and heal in seemingly impossible ways from hurts and ingrained behaviors that have dominated? And as a Christian, I believe there's only one answer, and it is the same for every man, woman, child. That is the salvation of Jesus Christ. Through him is the only way to finding truth and life. John 14:6. This is a life marked with constant work, maturity, growth, and understanding in how to heal from the past sins that we have committed and from the sins that have been committed upon us. This lifelong spiritual maturation is called in the Bible sanctification. It is a process of making oneself holy and acceptable unto God, to belong wholly to God and to become holy unto God. Of course, we cannot complete this process on our own or even in this lifetime, but it begins with our willingness to submit to the Holy Spirit, who will perform the miracle of change in our lives. We see the process of sanctification in the Apostle Peter in the Bible as he goes from denying Jesus 3 times before the crucifixion to after the resurrection, when Jesus commands Peter 3 times to feed his flock. Okay. In my own life, I've seen this process take. As the Holy Spirit has changed me from a person who was comfortably dying. Okay, now this goes on into alcoholism. Okay, let me see if I can pull this all together. So, as a church and as a family and as an individual, we have a responsibility to our loved ones, to our children, to not carry dysfunction in ourselves. If we know that we have an issue, if we know that we have some kind of problem, we need to address that, don't we? Not only for our own happiness, but for the happiness of our kids, for our loved ones, for our significant other. And what we're doing here, I mean, if we have an opportunity to change one thing about ourselves, and I'm talking interpersonal, that could change the lives of our kids, or change the lives of our significant others, bring more happiness into the home, bring more happiness to the individual, then why wouldn't we want to do that, you know? Because it's out of love. And what happens here is if we can do this, maybe we can't change that in ourselves as a person in this lifetime. You know, maybe a lot of us are older, so, you know, you heard that old saying, well, that's just the way he is, or that's just the way they are. Well, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I say that that's the way they've been, but that doesn't have to be the way it is. You know, I've changed. I look at my father now. When I was in prison, I seen my father in me. And everything that I said that I wouldn't do, that my father did, I've done. But through prison and the counselors, I was able to recognize the illness my father had. And by being able to see that and recognizing him in me, I was able to work past issues that I had, some issues that I had. So if we voice it out loud, if we recognize it, because, I mean, our loved ones know, the people around us know what our issue is. We know what the problem is. If we voice it out loud and we work on it openly, what can happen is our children won't grow up like us. They'll have that opportunity to be individuals other than what they were raised like. Even if we can't solve it for ourselves, we can fix it for them. And what happens is that bears fruit in them, and it bears fruit. So it bears fruit in them, and it bears fruit in on down the road. I believe this is one way that we can build God's kingdom, is by starting at home, is by starting with ourselves, by not being afraid, by being courageous, by shining a light on what we already know is an issue, so that we can heal our kids, so they don't carry the same issue that we did. We can stop that, and we can grow them up, and then they grow their kids up, and their kids grow up, and maybe we won't see Jesus in this lifetime. But what we can do is we can start to build God's kingdom from home for generations to come. So, and that's bearing fruit in our relationships, our children, our grandchildren. So all this, the point of all this together is it all comes back to family. It all comes back to our kids. It all comes back to healing ourselves. The recovery meeting, the process that Levi teaches on Wednesdays, it's all about the same thing. It's all tools for us to fix one thing. And all it takes is a conscientious thought, the willingness to dig deep inside of me and say, look, I don't want to do this no more. I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want my kids to be like this. And maybe by voicing that, you can change that inside, because I believe if you shine a light on a behavior, it'll stop. If you cover it up and you let others cover it up for you, it will continue. But the detrimental part is it'll continue in our kids to come and our generations that will come. So I believe the first way I've been going through and trying to figure out ways that, all the ways that we can build God's kingdom, and I believe that that's where it starts, is right at the home. That's why I would like people to come to the meeting, to come to the Monday night meeting, and to work the process and see how they work hand in hand, so that they can take that home and they can heal what's wrong in the families, no matter how small or minor it is, how insignificant you may think it is. The consequences and repercussions from it could be instrumental, monumental down the road, generations to come. And so, thank you. That's all I got.